Okay. All right, let's get this party started. So most of us think about innovation coming from the brilliant entrepreneur in the garage coming up with a better way to do something, but that is definitely not always the case. This next conversation is going to talk about how larger, bigger companies can still push the envelope, especially in places like Lyft and Salesforce. This also might be the only conversation today that talks about Batmobiles as well. Jordan, why don't you lead us in the chat? Take it away. Oh, you can't.
I can, but... Thank you. Whoa. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm Jordan Kivelstadt. I'll be moderating. And I think this is really fun. Like Mike said, you know, we all think about entrepreneurship, but intrapreneurship is just as important. And these two have done really cool things. So why don't we just start with you two introducing yourself and sort of your background.
I'll start. Thank you. So I think this is on. Okay. Ooh. Yes, I have a loud voice anyway, so I'm going to hold it a little further away. So first of all, thank you, everyone. Zach, Elizabeth, Sonoma State. Being here today is awesome. Meredith Schmidt. I'm currently with Salesforce for over 18 years. Bay Area local. Grew up in Kentfield, went to Kent Middle School, Strawberry Point Elementary. Right before high school, my mom decided we were going to move to Sonoma. I'm like, what are you doing? It's a bunch of cowboys with hats and belt buckles and cowboy boots. I'm like, what is this place? And loved it. And so my mom still lives in Sonoma. I'm actually back in Kentfield after 20 years in San Francisco. But that's me. Got a little surprise 4-year-old. He's awesome. And a little dog and a husband. So that's me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ethan Eyler. I also grew up in the Bay Area down in Menlo Park. Now I live in Mill Valley. You know, in my career, I've been at Lyft now for 10 years, so really since the beginning. There was about 25 people when I started. Prior to Lyft, I worked at a handful of different kind of tech entertainment-related startups. One actually with Mike, our MC here. We worked together years and years and years ago. As a side project during one of these startups, I, as a joke, created a company called Car Stash that made fuzzy mustaches for cars, which you now note to be the fuzzy pink mustache that are on the front of Lyft cars. And so I've joined at the beginning, and I've kind of spent my time at Lyft in a hybrid of brand and product innovation within the company. You know, every incarnation of the hardware that you've seen in Lyft cars, so from the fuzzy mustache to the glowing device to something we're about to release this year, the next gen device. Worked in bikes and scooters when that was a startup within the company, and I joined the founding team of our bikes and scooters division, leading brand and industrial design. And now I run a team called Brand Ventures that kind of tries to take some brand-focused, you know, innovation, hardware, software, product innovation, and operate it profitably and scalably, and kind of scale that out across the business. So I am happy to be here and good to see everybody.
I didn't actually say what I did at Salesforce, so maybe I could actually
was
tell you
gonna
what I actually
remind you of
do at
that.
Salesforce. I've just been there forever. So I joined, there were 600 employees, 300 million of revenue. We're at 70,000 plus, growing and declining, unfortunately, as you've seen in the news. But $30 billion of revenue. I spent my first 13 years at Salesforce working for our various CFOs, actually in finance. How do I operationalize revenue? So it was really all about revenue, product to cash. How do we create new products? How do we launch products? It was the area of finance I loved because you had to know the business. You worked with sales, you worked with product, you worked with marketing, and really just opened my eyes to so many parts of Salesforce. About 5 years ago, we wanted to innovate and kind of innovate from within. So we created a small business team. And so we kind of unintegrated sales, marketing, product, customer success into our own little team of about 60 folks to start, and said, if we were a startup today, what would we do differently? How would we actually go to market with sales? Right now, we had a one-to-one relationship that's not necessarily scalable. So it was really about coming back and stepping back and thinking about what do small businesses need. Wildly successful, we put those learnings back into the business, and then kind of coming full circle, now I'm building product for my former self. So how do you really run quoting, pricing, you know, how do you maintain product catalogs? How do you optimize pricing? How do you optimize your margins and really grow the top line and bottom line? So that's what our products do, and that's kind of where my finance to product has an interesting road, but really fun.
So one of the things that we've heard over and over is access to capital being a constraint for many of the entrepreneurs in the room. Obviously, you're in larger organizations where that may not be as much of a constraint. So when you think about new products and new things you're developing, and without those same capital constraints, how do you go through that roadmap internally to both yourself, your team, and then actually launch these things?
There is still a capital raise within the company, I'll tell you that. It does not come for free. I'd see there's smaller innovations and there's larger innovations, right? Like generative AI. We've had a team actually working on this for 5+ years, right? There's apparently some like windowless room somewhere in Palo Alto that people are like doing these things. It's very secret stuff, but there's an innovation team. There's also massive, okay, we've innovated with this. Now we're going to actually shift our resources. We will take, we've got some flagship products that are doing great. We want to innovate. You have to pitch yourself, but we'll take the resources away. Even within my world too, where we're actually bringing together 2 different product lines. And we're like, well, we're better together, but we also have to surge. So it's, we can do, what we see is, what are you trying to achieve for your customer? What's the business outcome? I'm still doing a pitch about what I'm doing and why is it going to generate revenue? What's my 5-year long-range plan? Every year I'm doing a new 5-year long-range plan. And how do I introduce products that actually supports that plan? But it is a lot of lobbying for resources still. So I wish it came easier.
Yeah, I think I'll echo that. The name of my team is Brand Ventures, such that we are raising capital internally to fund these projects. And I think, to echo what Meredith said, it's really about, as the company's grown, we started, as a startup where, everybody's working together, everybody's a team, there's based on a lot of trust, and you're just moving quickly. Where we are now, we're a public company, we're beholden to the street, and so it's really like much more rigor around, demonstrating ROI, for what we're pitching. And I'll say too, as we've grown, it's kind of gone from like every single sub-team having their own goals to like, what are the business's goals? And so really that pitch gets into like, how do I align the innovation that I'm trying to do against those goals? And how do I, I'll say that I delineate between like what I call step change integration and step change innovation versus incremental innovation. So for incremental innovation, it's you're A/B testing little tweaks to the product that might generate more ROI. There's less of a business case. It's like test in, learn, and ship it, and incrementally grow. A lot of the stuff that I work on is step change innovation, and so it's conceptually creating something that the consumers, we don't even know if they want it or not, and so it's kind of some combination of using your gut to say, okay, we think this is a good idea. We do have resources, so, unlike when we were a startup, it's kind of like more and more your gut and just going for it. As you get bigger, you try to do some qual and quant to prove it out, but in the end of the day, you're creating an ROI waterfall of X, Y, or Z to say, this, serves the business's goals. If you need other teams to support you in doing this, what are that team's goals in service of these larger goals, and how do you get them aligned, to build something? I'll use an example. One of the products I built, which is like the next-gen connected device that'll be in all of the Lyft cars, we went from like a fuzzy mustache to a glowing mustache to a connected device to this future one. These devices are extremely expensive, and we're giving them away to drivers. And so to have the business tell me I'm going to give you $10, $15 million to hand these out for free, you have to have a strong case. So one example, in the new device, there's technology in it that makes our mapping more efficient. So every ride, the pickup will be quicker because there's a GPS. And so I was able to partner with the mapping team and other sub-teams to say, okay, outside of just the brand of having these glowing lights, we're going to serve this core business purpose, and thus, we should get funded to do this project.
So for both of you, if internally, right, there's a hurdle rate or there's some justification, minimum ROI, what happens to all those projects that don't meet that?
I think that what I've seen, some are passion projects, and some actually are kind of skunk work, and they still do it. And they still prove themselves out. And I'd say it's 50-50 there, right? So some of the skunk work, I'm going to continue to do it because I've got people who want to do it with me, and we're not going to give up on our idea. And that comes back a couple months later, And they're like, look what I did. And we also do a lot of hackathons. That's the other way we kind of get in front of our product and technology leaders is we do hackathons a lot. And some of the best ideas I've ever seen come out of these are, I might watch 20 hackathon 5-minute presentations in a day, and there's one that you're like, wow, that's the one. So just like these small little, and you'll get 4 or 5 engineers together who have an idea, and it doesn't have to be in what they're doing. So I do think you can, those do come to life. The other 19 don't, right? But we still want to see that entrepreneurial spirit of those folks who are thinking about this every day. And I think hackathons are like just an incredible way to get juices flowing about new ideas.
Yeah, I'd say I have a similar stance. I mean, I've had many projects at Lyft shut down. Agree with Meredith that, it's finding these side teams who want to keep on working in it, kind of in the shadows, skunkworks style. I think a lot of times the organization might not be ready for it. I've had ideas that we put a pitch together, didn't get funded, but a year later, 2 years later, the economic environment has changed or leadership has changed, and it's kind of like waiting for the right time and seeing it through. And it's, it's just putting a lot of passion behind it and finding like-minded individuals that, have spare time or want to take a risk on something without kind of getting slapped down, for wasting resources.
So shifting gears a little bit to the people in this room, when you think about innovation that's been introduced from the outside, because I'm sure you've got internal innovation, you've got external innovation as well. What do you look for, think about when dealing with an external innovation partner? Do you have any feedback, guidance for all the people here who have startups that would love to work with a Salesforce or a Lyft, like as they think about what is critical to being a partner with a larger organization?
Yeah. I think the first thing I'd say, if somebody came to me is like really understanding the goals of the business. As businesses grow, again, hopefully everybody in the business is pointing towards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big goals, and so if a business is coming to us and they want to integrate with us or they're pitching us, it's like explaining that to them and having them come back and say, okay, the path of least resistance is going to be if you're helping us achieve one of the goals that we already have, because we're not going to, the likelihood of us like making up a new work stream or project are very slim, at this point. And so I think it's really aligning around that, and then we also look at too, it's just the partner itself and like their values and what they stand for, and like a deep dive into like the background of their business, who they are as partners, because, the last thing we want to do is get in a relationship with somebody who doesn't stand what we do for and could fly off the handle.
Yeah, I think 2 things. One is definitely values. How do you run your business? Are they aligned to our corporate values, right? We think about trust, innovation, customer success, equality, and sustainability. Like those are our top 5 values. Those are companies, that's kind of like our first litmus test. What do you stand for? One of the things we talk about is business is the greatest platform for change. How are you living that? And we look a lot too about just how are we giving back to our communities. We've started what we call the 1-1-1 model. When Mark founded the company, we had no money, but he said we're going to put 1% of our profit to donate to 501c3 corps, 1% of our employee time, and 1% of our product. Right? Really easy to commit to when you had none of the above. We've had over 10,000 customers take that commitment with us. We talk about it at Stanford. And so I think one of the things we look at too is, again, values is super important. Second thing is it's really about the customer. What are you doing for the customer that we can't do for the customer? How are you filling a gap, whether it's a product gap, a market gap, industry-specific type stuff? There's a lot of things that we just don't have the time to get to. And I think about my partner ecosystem. I look at it as you're completing my product, right? These are things I don't want to do. I don't want to get into technical, financial, accounting stuff. I'm going to partner on that. We have incredible partners like, a DocuSign. Probably everybody here uses DocuSign, right? I started using DocuSign 15 years ago. I think we were their first enterprise customer. But it's also looking at filling the gap. And so I think partnering with Salesforce is values and leading with values, but also what are we not serving? What are we not fulfilling for our customers, and how can you help us meet that customer need?
So thinking if you take that a little bit further into what then you've learned, you've each pitched dozens, if not hundreds, of concepts internally tap the resources to validate those concepts and determine whether or not they have the value to go forward. If you could synthesize those learnings, how would you translate those to an entrepreneur and say, okay, hey, here are some skills, some tests, litmus tests that I've seen that really are key to leading to a successful innovation or outcome versus one that maybe, I think you mentioned it, some been shut down. Like, what are those key learnings along the way that you apply forward now internally, and then how would you recommend those to someone who doesn't have that resource set around them?
I can think of two things. What is the business outcome you're achieving? What are you doing for your customer? Not for yourself, but actually, thinking about who your customer is and putting the customer in the center of the conversation is where things can go awry at Salesforce in particular, which is if you're not talking the value of what you're giving to our customers and our customers' customers, right? What's that outcome? So really focusing on the outcome for our customers' customers. Because that's who we're selling to, right? Is ultimately we connect our customers with their customers. So outcomes, and we use a framework called Jobs to be Done by Clay Christensen. There's a book written, and it's really what job are you trying to do for your customer? Whether it's they're thirsty and you're trying to make an amazing organic tea, and I'm trying to hydrate my customer, that's a job. But one of my other jobs, I need to set up products in a product catalog and price them. That's a job. Right, so we really think about what job are you trying to do, and how does that impact the outcome, and which personas of a customer, of a user of a product, a service, whatever, are you impacting? So really taking that customer lens and that customer-centric approach to the job, the outcome, and kind of the experience.
I'm going to kind of go back to, what I was talking about earlier is just what are the business goals? Like if you're trying to sell something into a partner internally, like how can you help leadership achieve their goals and the goals of the business? Again, to me, it's doing your homework and really if you have resources, a smaller company, you don't have as many resources. With a bigger company, hopefully you do to validate, quant, whatever you need to do to set up that pitch. And it just has to be ironclad, and you have to tell a story, that this is going to be profitable, break even or profitable. And what is the waterfall? How do you lay that out? And how do you, quantify that? And there's kind of like tangible and intangible benefits in any pitch. And the tangible benefits are very mathematical. You don't know if it's going to work, but if it did work, this is what the outcome would be. Intangible benefits, it's like, I live in a half marketing, half product world, and it's much about brand preference, increasing brand preference. And how do you attribute that? How do you track that? And so really, in a certain sense, it's it gets into storytelling. And on any pitch, there needs to be some finesse. You need to get people excited internally, externally about what you're doing and to kind of sell the vision and go big and have some showmanship. And then I think kind of the final piece is how you can establish trust with people in relationships. And even in a large organization, I'm fortunate to have been at Lyft for 10 years, so I know a lot of people there. I have it easier than a lot of new people in an organization, but if people trust you, they'll talk to you, they'll want to help you. And if there's other teams you need to work with and you're helping achieve their goals, then it's a win-win. And so it's kind of the combination of the things. And I think as you from a startup to hyper growth to IPOing, it gets more and more, you need to have the business case ironclad when because there's so many conflicting priorities within business.
So you both talked about the importance of selling and the passion, and so I'm really curious, can each of you share one of the projects you've worked on that you were most passionate about and maybe an obstacle that came in the way in the pursuit of that project?
You've probably got more interesting stories with Lyft than I do with Salesforce, but when I started the small business team within the product world, I was told, Meredith, you're going to run the sales team for the first time. I'm like, I've never run a sales team, but sure. And why I was excited, it was only covering small business 1 to 20 employees or less in the United States. And they said, well, you're going to do this with half the head count, but you got to give me the same revenue. I'm like, well, that's a fun challenge. And Dan over here is laughing because I pulled his wife in there with me. And I was like, Heather, you're going to do it with me because we can do this together. But we really had to think about how are we going to change the go-to-market? And how are we going to challenge ourselves to actually work completely differently? We brought 80 sales folks on. They hated us. They're like, what are you doing? We don't want to work in product. Why is sales working in product? We lost some good folks, but we brought in the right sales leader who's been a good friend of mine for 15 plus years. And I knew he had the passion to change too. And I knew Heather, Dan's wife, also had the passion to lead this team through the change. It was a rough first year, but by God, by year 2, we had the highest growth of any sales team across the entire world with, again, half the people we started with. And it was just changing the way we go to market and the way we talk to our customers. Salesforce had this, for the beginning of time, one account rep would have one, every account would have an account rep. Well, when you're servicing 1 to 20 employee account, that was 25% of our customer base. So we had one rep trying to service 600 accounts. That is not going to work out. We changed the model, right? We went to a pooled versus named model. So 80%, we said, you know what? We're going to create a team who's not a dedicated team, but just first in, first out. And just change from within was really, really hard. But I'll tell you, by that second year, when we got our mojo on and we started beating every sales team globally, we're like, holy crap, we're onto something. It was a really tough time, but that model is now being adopted as of this year everywhere in the world. So that's a story I would tell.
I have 2 quick stories I'll tell that kind of feed to the same theme of, like, a lot of the times when these projects are getting blocked, it's either money or resources. Like, if your idea is solid, let's say, and you weren't, like, laughed out of the room on, like, base concept, it's just like it's too expensive, or we just don't have people to put on it right now because it's not a main priority. Over the years at Lyft, on the marketing side of what I do, we've had a lot of success in the past. Undercover Lyft was a content YouTube series we created where Shaq would be the driver of your Lyft, and we'd film it, or Demi Lovato or Odell Beckham Jr., a bunch of different people over the years. Every time we would do one of these, it would cost us $300,000-$400,000 between filming it, paid media, paying the talent. All these things add up, and leadership looks and, what are the metrics we get? It's like views on YouTube and shares on social media, which is great, but it's hard to quantify, like, the ROI, value of that. So with Brand Ventures, the team I'm working on now, we looked at that and said, okay, how could we create content but not spend a ton of money? And the approach we took, which we're in the middle of right now, was reaching out to production companies in Hollywood, and meeting with 15 different, companies who create content, reality TV or scripted content, and put them on Hulu and Netflix and these different streamers. And basically what we did is say we're going to pay a fee to each one of you, much less than $500,000 to each of them, to develop 5 concepts for us. And then with you, we're going to go pitch these out to the streamers, Apple, Netflix, Hulu, and we get a piece as a producer, executive producer on the content. We basically get made whole. So the goal is not to make a ton of money. The goal is just to get our money back, but have content out. And so it really gets into like figuring out how to work with the money, and to make some of these more like whimsical big things happen. It's like what I've learned over the years is just like it's all about the money. And so like how can I make this not cost anything, because then it's hard to say no. Different project. I can't really get into it, but Mike alluded to Batmobiles. I'm building Batmobiles. Batmobiles are very expensive, so I became very good friends with technical accounting and learned about amortization. And anything you're building, you can amortize, and really just understanding what you can do in these regards and getting smart with accounting and finance and finding solutions and kind of thinking outside the box of how you would normally approach something. So I guess all that summed up, it's like figure out how to get money and account for money.
Everybody here is curious, what is the amortization schedule of a Batmobile?
Yeah.
I can't get into that.
I think we just heard about Creator Plus, right? There's a company for you to work with.
I think I know you both work for publicly traded companies, so we won't share any future trade secrets, but I'm sure that we all don't read every intimate detail coming out of your organization. So you just alluded to one, are there any really cool new innovations that you both are working on that you can share right now, that is, something that's exciting to you personally as much as to your organization?
For me, it's totally geeky, and I love it now, which is generative AI. It's scary in my personal sense, but I think this is the biggest change we're going to see in this industry since the internet in the 90s. I really believe this is It's a game changer. We're scratching the surface of it right now. You think about, as a salesperson, I can auto-generate an email response. That's great. You still kind of want to check it, but it starts getting incredibly powerful really quickly. And so we're spending a lot of time on this, thinking even when I'm running revenue, I want to know as a leader, I want to be able to ask in just a bot, in natural language, hey, how is my discounting look across my divisions in Europe? Well, right now, I'd have to go in, find somebody who could write a report, filter this out, do that, and then I'd have to have somebody tell me about it, right? The future is I can type in that exact question. It spits out in seconds a narrative real time. It generates automatically a dashboard and charts to tell me where to go look at. It can actually then marry the data with, hey, and by the way, you do have a discounting issue in Southern Europe, but also I noticed there's a new sales leader hired. Maybe I need to go investigate the sales leader. This kind of power at your fingertips has to be well thought out. We have a ethical and humane use person at Salesforce who has been looking at this for years, but I just think the power of what we're going to see in the application of what we're seeing. Like, I just saw something on Instagram the other day. It was like, here's 10 tips on how to do a job interview. And it was like, have the bot write tell them what jobs you're looking for. And it pulls up like jobs. Have it read your resume and make it better. You still have to go look at it. And then one of the things we are talking about is you have to trust but verify, because the data looks not great. Like, as a marketer too, hey, I need to write a new copy. That might have taken me 2 weeks to write and go through 5 different approvals. Well, maybe I get 80% there with a bot, with the chat GPT. And all I gotta do is tweak 20% of it. I can go to market that much faster. So there's still humans involved. The way we're involved is different. But I think, to me, this is the most exciting thing to really think through. And I was just told, I was asked yesterday who's going to lead it. And I'm like, oh, I'll do it for my team. But we're scratching the surface. It's super exciting, super scary. But I think literally it's going to change technology.
I agree. I say I'm fascinated and terrified by it.
Yeah.
For everybody with kids, though, in Marin, I was reading an article. I was in the Atlantic or something the other day, and this person they were trying to find summer camps for the kids, and they put in to the query like the parameters, and it spit out like a detailed schedule of like booking reservations for all the summer camps and all the school stuff, which seemed like a good tip. But save a lot of time. I think mine is much less broad and maybe less interesting than the generative AI and what Meredith was talking about, but just speaking to a project that I've personally been working on, which I kind of alluded to, is this next-gen in-car hardware device that I've been building for 3 years now. One of the biggest pain points in rideshare is the pickup, and it's like it's showing you that the driver's somewhere they're not, or vice versa. And we can run all kinds of data that if you reduce the pickup time by 1 second, that turns into millions of dollars of revenue over the years. And so this device that we built leveraged like the newest chip from Quectel that basically has a GPS that's more powerful than iOS and Android that makes our cars then more accurate on the map. Our mapping team we can pipe all this data to the mapping team and the telematics teams and all these other teams to leverage that data to basically just improve, like a step change improvement in pickup experience. And when it's hardware, it's something that, on the software side, Uber couldn't just go make overnight. And so kind of building like a moat, to differentiate is exciting to me.
Can you get them to stop canceling my Lyfts in Marin? Because that would be amazing.
I know. Apologies.
It was amazing when I moved from San Francisco to Marin. I was like, wow.
Try coming to Sonoma.
Oh, I've tried.
It's like your nearest Lyft is 28 minutes away. Awesome.
I will give Lyft credit. Way better than Uber in Marin. Still not great, but better.
So I do want everyone to know that we talked to 2 large technology companies who made it 25 minutes without the conversation going to AI. So well done, guys. Yep. So I think we've got 1 minute left, and I think the best thing that we can do to this group is just, as I said, distill down those 2 or 3 salient learnings from doing this for 10, 15 years of constantly innovating, even though, and I think it's really interesting because, we know that everyone says, oh, well, big companies can't innovate. They buy, they don't innovate internally. And we know they're innovating all the time. You just don't see it because, I think you said, Ethan, it's rarely a step. Right. It's often incremental, but over a series of incremental changes leads to step change. Yep. So what are those sort of most valuable takeaways you would just share with the group as your learnings distilling the last 10, 15 years?
I'll give mine really quick. Customer, put your customer at the center of everything you do. If you're doing what's right for the customer, you're doing what's right. And how are you helping your customer and helping your customer's customers? Just put that customer in the center and think about their experiences and what you're delivering for them.
Totally agree with Meredith on that. I mean, I definitely, and Lyft definitely thinks customer first. And I guess to add on to that, doing the right thing for the customer isn't always the right thing for, for the bottom line. It's like a long play. Like, it might be upfront pain because customers are going to love us more over time and they'll spend more money with us, but to get there, we have to spend a certain amount of money up front as an investment. And when you're a public company and you're talking to Wall Street, it's like that can be scary. And so really it's just in whatever you're pitching, do your homework. I said this before, it's like do your homework, make the pitch solid, and then beyond that it's just showmanship, storytelling, and your relationships and building trust with people and getting everybody excited to get that done. But I agree with the customer first mentality.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for making the time. Awesome. I really appreciate it. We're going to hand it back to you guys.